I've always heard the terms doula and midwife, yet I was unclear on the difference between the two. The God and His Earth elaborates.
Yeah, so a doula is more like a birthing companion. They just kind of help you, doing things, making you at ease. Of course, the Earth would have a way better definition.
So first and foremost, we have to understand that the term doula is a living Greek word. The Greek language is not a dead language. That means servant.
Doula is somebody that is just kind of like a companion.
The work that many of us do now is categorized under doula. It was a term that started to be used by white men and white women that came out of they seeing white women being treated a certain way in the hospital system. If those of us of a certain age may remember the term labor coach. Okay, and so you have this under doula, someone who's a support person. Now, doula has been deemed the term for somebody who's a labor coach or support person, somebody trained to support pregnant women throughout, generally speaking, throughout their perinatal period, which is pregnancy, labor, and postpartum.
And they help you with certain things, breathing exercises, checking up on you even afterwards.
Now, doula can be seen almost as a marketing term. You got people saying they a deaf doula, they a tax doula, they everybody type of doula, right? But if we think about original people, what we now deem as a doula would have been somebody, maybe an auntie, another woman in the town or village that understood the supportive nature of working with women and supporting her with just anything the mother needed and maybe the midwife needed as well.
The midwife does some of those things, but the midwife is the one that's actually helping you to plan out your birth. The midwife is also the one that's going to help you deliver the child. Doulas don't do that.
Just to make sure whether the mother was needed to walk, whether she needed a hug, a cold towel, a hot towel on her, and understanding the physiology of birth. We're dealing in a situation nowadays where you got 2 or 3 generations of women, and unfortunately black women, who may, until they have their own child, have never seen nobody give birth. So we're in a state where we need to hire out somebody called a doula, but at one time that would have been somebody in your community, in your, just knowing history of black folks in your church, in what have you, that knew how to support women because they had done it or they had been helping since they was young. And so now we have trainings to become a doula.
Midwife has a level of education, expertise, and clock hours in the field that puts her in the scope of practice that would allow her to be licensed or certified through whatever state that they're in.
Now we have to teach our community how to advocate for themselves, because now the majority of our people, even so say conscious people and people have knowledge of self, are delivering their babies in the hospital. So they have to understand how to navigate that system and how to advocate for themselves.
Whereas a doula, I think some states might have some regulation regarding that, but it's not nowhere as stringent as a midwife is.
But generally speaking, a doula is not trained to do clinical work. A doula is not trained to understand the physiology of a newborn baby to also support that baby, or a fetus to understand the growth and development of that fetus in depth that a midwife does.
So a midwife has more, is more certified, more educated. You say more. Like you said, more hours in the field and everything.
More hours in the field, and like I said, doulas don't deal with delivery because that's out of the scope of their practice.
Right.
And so that doesn't mean they don't always overlap, because I'm a doula, I'm a trained doula, but I no longer function in just that role because I'm going towards my midwifery practice. So a lot of it is also responsibility and legalization and licensure. There's no license for doulas. There's all type of doula trainings, and there's nothing wrong with that. Midwives just have another level of responsibility, and one of the other main differences is your midwife is your primary provider. Just like you would say your OB is the primary provider. That's the one you're going to your prenatal visits. That's the one that's checking and making sure you're measuring your stomach is measuring to the equal to or near to the gestation of your baby and how your baby is growing. That's the responsibility of the midwife. That's not necessarily the responsibility of the doula.
Almost similar to like a nurse versus the doctor.
Definitely. That would be a good example.
Because even in saying that, nurses do clinical.
The only difference with nurses and doctors, nurses have a lot of medical knowledge.
Nurses are going to still know how to take blood. You can run labs and things like that, right?
Right. Well, depending on what kind of, because you have the LPN, the RN, and so forth and so on.
So you got a CNA. A CNA
right.
nurse is usually nurses who only have a certain amount of a smaller amount of education. That's like the lowest.
Right.
Then you have your LPN. An LPN may or may not have a college degree. Most of them have like associates, right? And then you have your RN, which is crazy. That field is I never understood why they did that, right? Because I would think that because the LPN stands for a licensed practicing nurse, a licensed practitioner nurse or whatever. Right. And then the highest they got is registered. That always just was crazy to me, because I would think that the highest would have been the LPN as far as the name. But
the simplest way I can say it is that the doula is the support person. That's like having an auntie in the room. You know what I'm saying? But nowadays she has to be a bit more educated about the system because of just how we live here in America. And so our doulas that's trained have to do more than just be the loving auntie that's handing you the water and wiping your brow. They have to know to say, okay, mama, we know you coming on 28 weeks. There might be some testing going on with your doctor. Make sure you have your 3 questions to ask your doctor when you go into your next visit. Things like that. Helping them write a birth plan. There are many midwives that do that same job as a doula within their services, but there are some midwives that say, hey, I really think for this particular client, they need a doula as well. And so it's really a educated support person that's helping them navigate in another way. So I can't say as a nurse, because a nurse is trained in a clinical setting and a doula is not necessarily, in most cases, not trained clinically.
It's just that doulas don't have nearly the same type of medical experience, education, clock hours.
As like a RN or LPN.
Yeah, like they don't, like midwives, they learn a lot of stuff, that crosses into some of the nursing, field. They're checking all kinds of stuff. Midwives do things that, are in the field of nursing. They're not nurses. Some of them are. Some of them are nurses. But doulas, not so much.
If Mecca did this.